Гледате Еврозум во Европскиот парламент во Брисел. Мој гостин во ова издание е Михаел Гелер од Европската народна партија од Германија, претаник. Mr. Gehler, thank you to accept my invitation for this interview. First, I would like to know what's your comment, what's your assessment about the report, progress report that the European Commission just published?
Well, it has got a more critical tone with regard to Macedonia. That is the general assessment. The facts and figures and that have been established, I think, is based on the judgments that we receive from our delegation in Skopje on the one side, but also from the statistics and figures and from our contacts with relevant stakeholders. And on this basis, such a report is compiled. I think if we want to assess it properly, it is worthwhile to look at the different aspects. And when there is something to be criticized, I'm always prepared to listen to what our Macedonian partners say, how they assess it. So we in the parliament, we are not on the ground. We are not the long-term observers in the sense that we could work with all the technicalities of everyday life, but we are in return open to judging divergent opinions on issues that are addressed, if it's about minorities or about rule of law and such issues.
The progress report and the Commissioner Füle himself, they're talking about the fundamental rights.
Yeah.
I mean, rule of law, judiciary, means the very basic values, which are, I guess, very important for your party. When you see that there is a problem in respect of those very basic values, what do you think, what the European Union, European institution should do in order to prevent the further deterioration of the situation?
Well, first of all, the agenda towards the European Union is the same for all candidates. So when there is a problem identified, it's either that you work on it because it's actually there, or you give evidence, your competent authorities, that the way we see it is not as we perceive it. So when it's about the rule of law, the application of existing legislation, or the reform agenda in concrete as it is implemented, when there is a divergence of opinion, that is a point of discussion. But I think for all candidates, it's worthwhile to assess thoroughly whether or not these points that have been identified are true. And it's for the better of any candidate, and you
that's the question.
Yeah.
In several progress reports in the past years, the very same problems were targeted and stressed by the Commission.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, there is no progress in such as area as fundamental rights, freedom of the media, rule of law.
Yeah, I mean, there is no...
So that's the problem. How can, as a EPP, the VMRO Diplomat is a sister party, a ruling party in Macedonia. How can you help them in order to prevent further deterioration of the fundamental values, basic European values?
I mean, we are in contact with all our sister parties in the framework of the European People's Party, and I think such a report is a good occasion to have a bilateral contact with our friends and ask them how they see things, and also that we give our viewpoints how to best address it if it actually exists. As I said, there might be a divergence.
You say if actually exists means that you don't believe what European Commission is saying.
Well, I would say there is a high probability that there is some point to raise. But before I make a judgment, I hear both sides.
So you don't believe mainly the judgment of the European Commission?
It's not what I believe in. No, I believe something when I have heard both sides, and then I can make a judgment. That is my point. I'm not one who says the Commission is a holy cow and what they say is sacrosanct.
Yeah, but it means that the Commission ignored the point of view of the ruling party when they drafted the report.
They are not ignoring it, they are assessing it.
Yeah.
And apparently the assessment is as it is. And as I said, my final verdict on that will come out once I have also talked with my friends from the EPP, which is the Morode-Pomene.
Yeah, okay, but there was a Berlin conference, very important one, when we see the Berlin engaged in the process of the enlargement for the highest level.
Yes.
We saw Madame Merkel, and she stressed also the very important problems in the region, including Macedonia.
Yeah. I mean, the heritage of former Yugoslavia is in a different points still present in the succeeding republics. I mean, if you look at how long it took Croatia to enter, we have had 8 years of negotiations, and we still have special points to raise with progress reports every year. So the heritage of an old system, the heritage that comes out of the ignorance of ethnic diversity in former Yugoslavia, such issues.
But now you agree that there are important problems.
Yeah, I mean, I know where the areas of problems are, or potentially are. And then it remains to be seen on the ground how it actually is perceived by the people concerned. So before I make a final conclusion, with regard to what our delegation in Skopje has found out, and what the Commission with other sources, it's not only the delegation in Skopje, but it's other available sources. Before I have not taken a discussion with my political friends, I don't make a final verdict. I would say definitely there are points that are to be discussed, but I would like to have their viewpoint first before I'm in a position to finally make up my mind. And let's face it, in any candidate country and in any new member state, there is a legacy of the past, there are problems existing, and there is reason for intense cooperation with regard to the deficits. I mean, if the country had no problems with neighbors and had no problems inside, it would be probably further ahead. So if that is not yet so, we must and will engage with our partners to overcome the identified deficits, either when they really exist, to address them, or if they are wrongly perceived, to judge it in another framework. I mean, we as a parliament, we now react with an own report on the progress report of the Commission, and I think prior to that we will have comprehensive contacts, and we have a parliamentary delegation for the relations with Macedonia, and insofar we will address it with our colleagues from the Macedonian Parliament, and there we have a spectrum of political opinions, which is good. And we have a spectrum of opinions here, and that is the way we should address problems that have been identified by the Commission.
Okay, let me ask you about, let me go back in the Berlin conference. What do you expect? I mean, there is from a highest level from Berlin saying to give an impetus to enlargement process, but on the other hand there is a new designated commissioner, president of the commission, Juncker. He's elected, but
yes,
he has to be approved.
Yes.
Saying in the next 5 years no enlargement.
Well, that is simply a description of the technical realities. I do also not first we have the principled decisions, and with regard to the principles, the Western Balkans as a whole has this perspective of enlargement, of accession to the European Union, as you are European countries, and as the Balkan has in the past been a trouble spot, the best way to overcome a trouble spot is to integrate it in a proper way, and we are doing it step by step. So that is the principle. But the realities, if we look at the remaining countries, including Macedonia, are, in my mind, looking at Croatia, it's taking 8 years of negotiations, and the countries who are to come yet, they are not perhaps easier necessarily than Croatia. So definitely negotiation plus ratification will take more than 5 years. So insofar, we must also see the different feelings and sentiments that we have. We have, whether we like it or not, there is an enlargement fatigue in the European Union. We have public opinions who say, we are so big now and we have so many problems. That is one point. We must see it without, so to say, fully giving in. If we fully gave into that, we would say, okay, we stop the entire process. No, we are not doing it. We are continuing the process in order to be able to see after 5 years where we stand. And each and every candidate can contribute in its specific way to overcome or to approach and come closer to the European Union, because the acquis communautaire, the legal framework in which we are, is known. So you know which legislation to undertake, not to get further away from the EU, but to be more and more compatible with the EU. You can do that as candidate countries or as hoping to become. You can do it at any point to further work on the legislative process towards us.
What can we expect from Berlin after the Berlin conference? Do you think that the German diplomacy is going to change somehow the attitude, way how they handle the process and the relation with the candidate countries?
The center is Brussels, and Berlin is the biggest member state, but the center is Brussels.
Yeah.
The center is Brussels, and I think Berlin, Germany, will fit into the general approach that we are taking. That is, that we work with the candidates on the preparation of enlargement, but in a time that is actually digestible both for the candidates and for the Union. I think if we look at the candidates, and as I said, Croatia took 8 years of negotiations, it is a time where we offer a perspective.
No, the question is whether Berlin is going to engage itself.
We are.
Better.
I think the Germans are in a mainstream position in this regard. We are not the most hesitant ones, but we are also not the ones who want to accelerate the process at all prices, at all expense. But we are, I think, mainstream in the middle, arguing that we go forward step by step according to the progress that achieved, the real progress achieved and implemented of all the candidate countries. And that is I think that is a fair position, both for the old members and for the aspiring members, that we do not overlook, that we do not ignore the deficits, that we set the standards, that we set what is to be achieved, and are supportive as a union for you to achieve it. Now, and I think that is a fair approach.
Okay, Mr. Gachner, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Това беше Михаел Галер от Европската народна партия, пратеник во Европскиот парламент во Брисел. Благодарам за вниманието и до гледање.